talk a little bit about how you were able to use your experience in the sports world and how you were able to translate that into, what you're doing with venture capitalizing and with being at Minority Entrepreneurship Institute and building teams. How are you able to translate that? And then talk a little bit more about building teams with deep relationships.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? I think I'll hit the latter part and then circle back to the first part of your question. I think in the latter part of your question, what makes up a great team? And spent 2 years working with the LA Rams as part of our front office, and you spend a lot of time thinking about personnel. At the NFL, at the highest level, being a great athlete is table stakes, right? The NFL is all about personnel and matchups. That's why the draft is so important, and the league spends a lot of time investing into player evaluation and getting the right person to be a part of this team. It's the exact same thing in venture capital and investing in great entrepreneurs and great startups. Is it oftentimes comes down to, especially at the earliest stages, the team, right? That is the number one thing we look at, is the makeup of the team, their background. Is this a tight-knit group? Is this the group that is going to, in a sense, create a movement with their product and take it to scale? That is exactly, what we evaluate, what we look for. And so to reverse engineer that to the first part of your question, what makes that up? How do where do you even start? I think you first have to start really with, number one, what type of team is it that you want? And
Mm,
in order to know what type of team you want, I think you have to know what type of player you are, right? So you have to first know yourself. Back to what we were talking about, internal self-awareness. You have to know your own strengths, your own weaknesses. One of the healthiest exercises I've done is written a user manual on myself. Not as if I'm
okay.
like a robot or anything, but hey, if
Right.
you're interacting with Jarrod, yeah, not like a AI bot or whatever, but if you're interacting with Jarrod, this is his strengths. This is, what he's best at. This is where he thrives. These are areas where he's not as good at. These are his weaknesses, areas where he's trying to, either grow or delegate. Right. I've honestly really focused on doubling down on my strengths, because sometimes if you just only focus on the weak, you won't figure out ways to leverage your strength. Right. So when thinking about building your team, it's being hyper aware of your strengths, hyper aware of your weaknesses. What can you grow in? What can you delegate? And so when you think about your strengths, how can you find others that either A, complement that and help amplify that, even higher, or B, are able to help supplement some of those weaknesses, right? And thinking about personnel and decisions. So if I'm a great quarterback, but I have a terrible offensive line, it doesn't really matter how good of a quarterback I am, because you have a
Right.
terrible offensive line.
Yeah.
No different than a team.
Yeah.
If you are a great visionary and you love casting vision, but you are not an operator and tied into the details, those are just going to be ideas on a whiteboard,
Yeah.
right? So it's understanding who you are in
Hmm.
order to find the right people to supplement, complement, and ultimately have that, in a sense, category defining strength to go to the next level together.
Yeah.
And it takes up, and I think the biggest thing is that building that, number one, takes trust. Number
Mm.
two, takes time. It is not over. I mean, if you want to know what it's like to build a team, ask the Brooklyn Nets right now when they got James Harden, Kyrie Irving. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just all of a sudden throw this roster together and think it's gonna mesh.
Mm.
It takes time, because we're all human. We're all different people. I mean, you and I are completely different, and we have different skill sets, different backgrounds, experiences, so on and so forth. That takes time to mesh, right? And so, what I found is the best leaders are not only obviously hyper aware of their own strengths, they're hyper aware of their people and what their
Mm.
people's strengths are, what their people's weaknesses are, what their people's values are, what their people's dreams and goals are, right? And so that being able to be aware of all of that will allow you to, one, have a greater depth of relationship, but also two, when it does come to those tasks, you're able to, in a sense, collaborate on a different level, right?
Yeah.
I think the three C's of trust. This is something I got from Urban Meyer just during my time at Ohio State. The three C's of trust, really at the core of a heartbeat of a team, are character, kind of back to those alignment of values, competence, right? The fact that I trust that you are good at what you do, and then connection. The fact that I've spent time with you and I understand who you are as an individual, right? I think one of the biggest challenges in early stage startups, when you're building or you're part of a new team and you're leading the team, is either A, you can feel misunderstood, or you could misunderstand someone else.
Hmm.
And the moment, the number one inhibitor to learning, to collaboration, is defensiveness. So the moment we start getting defensive and, well, this person doesn't understand me and they don't know who I am and this isn't a good fit, that's going to be tough to get through. You have to spend some more time on that connection and that confidence to make sure there's no misunderstanding. So I think that has been a huge, huge formula, for myself. And then, last thing I'll say is, a great starting point, if you're starting from ground zero and I'm building a new team, is defining success, right? The fastest way, I think we had shared this before, the fastest way to find out if you're on the same page with someone is ask them what their definition of success is. And if it aligns with you, then I would say you're on the same page. And if it doesn't, you might need to work that out.
Right.
So yeah, man, it's a multi-layered question, but those have been the elements I've found that have led to the highest success.
That's awesome, man. I mean, such good content that you talked about. I mean, even talking about, like you said, the 3 C's, the character, the connection, and remind me of the third one. Confidence. I knew I had it in my head. I was like, oh, I'm gonna. But and also talking about the 4 elements. Understanding your strengths, understanding your weaknesses, and understanding. As well as your team's strengths and weaknesses, and how you guys all play into that, and how you want to grow and what you can delegate. Once you're able to really lay those out, and like you said, then define success, now you have a template of, okay, this is the direction that we're going, and everyone can come along. And so I know culture is such a tough thing to really implement, and not only implement but keep as you grow. And so you talked often a little bit about it's not about grinding and working hard. It's a competitive world. It's all about systems and scale.